So I usually don't use a mic. I usually don't need one, but I'll do it so that to make sure the people in the back hear. So yesterday, Thursday morning, I woke up after having a dream. My mother passed away in 2001. And in the dream, I dreamt that, for those of y'all that are friends with me on Facebook, I put everything on Facebook. But I dreamt that I was someplace I'd never been before. And that my mother was sitting at a table. And she was drinking a cup of coffee by herself. And she looked kind of tired. She looked like she'd been traveling. And I went over to see how she was. But she didn't recognize me. And I was brushing her hair because it looked a little crazy. And she just, let me brush her hair. And I brought her a little washcloth for her to wash her face because she had dust and just needed to refresh herself. And then I asked her if she needed more coffee. And she said yes. And then I woke up. I think because I was going to go make coffee and bring it to her. But that was the dream. And it just left me with this very sweet feeling. I hadn't dreamt her in probably more than a decade. It'd been a really long time. So it was just really lovely to have that dream and to have that feeling. Even though she didn't know who I was and didn't say my name or anything else, it was just beautiful to see her. So whenever something like that happens, I have to read part of this poem. It's a very long poem, but I'm not going to read it all to you, just the beginning. It's a poem called One-Sided Conversations with My Mother. Cemetery. Ama, when you were alive, I never once spoke to you in English. Now, 10 years after your passing, I think there are things I would like to say that I've never learned how to say in Spanish. For some conversations, a dictionary is a doorway. For others, it is an obstacle. It's raining today like it was the day you died, the way it rained in the weeks after. Someone said it meant the sky was mourning with us, but I've always loved the rain, and so did you. You rested when it rained, no fighting the sun's heat. I imagine you could feel the hot earth sighing and all the green leaves singing. Your remains rest here. The earth is soft beneath my feet. The grass springs back when I have passed. I buried my braid here with you. You lay here alone for 9 years minus one day before they laid his remains beside you. The ground above him seems fractured, unsettled. I am not the girl I was 10 years ago, Ama. What do we say now about death, about dying, about life? A little piece. And there's a poem in here that Carmen and Jesse have heard probably more than once. But I like to read it because it's very depressing. And also because the first 14 times I read it, I started crying. I would just break into tears. And so I think mostly I read it now because I don't cry anymore when I read it. But you never know, I might surprise you. So this book, Blood Sugar Canto, was a book I wrote in response to being diabetic, coming from a family with people with diabetes. And wanting to think and talk and move through my fear. Because I felt that so much of the way that we think about illness has to do with fear. And I don't see how it's possible to heal if we move in fear. So the whole book is an intent to not be afraid anymore. And I realized that the big main thing, the big main fear that I needed to write about was amputation, because it was my father's biggest fear. En trozos, in pieces. I never met my mother's mother. Concepcion Ligues Lara died the year before I was born. My father told stories about rushing her to the doctor to have her toe, her black flesh toe, amputated. My mother never said anything, never said how she died, never described her illness. The last time I saw my tia Lupe, it was my mother's funeral. My tia died 2 years later. I remember her strong, graceful, lifting herself out of the car into the wheelchair, survivor of amputation, toes, feet, legs. They'd begun on her fingers. I remember her fierce expression. My father had been diabetic for 6 years. The only time I ever saw him cry was after the doctor told him it was likely they would have to amputate his foot. He turned his face to the pillow, body convulsing with broken sobs. He healed, kept his feet for another 18 years. After 4 years of silence, I called when I heard he'd lost one foot. Neither of us spoke of it. We spoke of living and of pain, of dying and the end of fear. We said goodbye, knew we would not speak again. Later I learned they also amputated his other foot. What he feared most was to go in pieces. Now I fear it too. Strange days, terror when I see the crutch, the walker, the wheelchair, the power scooters. Terror when I see the missing foot, the missing limb, strangers on the bus and at the store and at work and on the street, anywhere, everywhere, terror. Yes, limbs are lost every day to war, in car accidents, at work, to freezing temperatures, to violence. But this is the terror of being devoured, one limb not being enough to satiate the beast. This is the terror of going piece by piece. Would I be strong enough to follow my Tia Lupa's example? Would I want to? Could I see myself go in pieces? I think I would choose to live, but I don't know. There is a prayer I cannot help. Diosito, grant me 75 years of life to do my work. Please, I want to stay whole and strong, able to walk. I know this is selfish. I have already been given more than others. More life, more strength, more freedom, more health, more love, more time. But I can't help wanting more. Sometimes I hold my feet, my calves in my hands, stare at my fingers. I cannot comprehend my body without them. Oh body, cuerpecito mío, how many years I wasted not loving you, judging you for what they said you lacked, for what you were too much of. Too big, too dark, too fat, too short, too India, too masculine, not pretty enough, not feminine enough, not worthy of love. What does any of that matter now? Oh body, cuerpecito mío, I will never see you through their eyes again, only through mine, praising your strength and your beauty, the life I've lived through you, your joy and your endurance, your hunger and your light. I will learn to take care of you as I have learned to love you. No terror, only love. So, a couple more. So the last book, which just came out this past spring, it's interesting to me because the first 3 books that I wrote, I cried the entire time. While I was writing them, while I was revising them, while I was publishing them. I just cried on them to cry on them. This is the first book that I didn't cry all the way through. And I thought it was interesting because, you move through different phases of being, of healing. And I've been thinking a lot about strength in the past couple of years. And so then I wrote this poem. And this poem had to be one of the first ones I wrote for this collection. Coaligüe. I am not your broken daughter, healing and breaking in turns. I've spent my life with your other faces, a pantheon of feminine gods, learning the lessons of humility and endurance, sacrifice and patience. I've known your name all my life. Your name and the name they said was yours, softening all the hard consonants of you to fashion something softer to their foreign tongues. Your image was always there for me, even for me, born north of the river, to parents born north of the river. But my eyes never rested on you, never traced your image until I left the lands of my childhood. You lived in me, but I shied away, took refuge in turquoise and roses and stars, in dark skin and powder blue robes, in the round mother, the gentle mother, the earth mother. But the years came for me, and death came for me, and loss came for me. And how many times now have I grown new hearts, and then they came from my head. And what was left but to follow your example? I look in the mirror and see you. You are in my bones, 2 snake heads emerging from my neck, serpent skin over my face, serpent eyes and serpent fangs, and I keep surviving. At 44 now, I say your name in my sleep. At 44, I crave the sight of you and keep your image close. At 44, I can rest with your serpent heads and severed hands and anguished hearts. I carry skulls of my own now. We cast identical shadows, and when the sun shines in my eyes, I see the stone of you. I see what I could not see before. You have always been the one, beneath, above, beyond. I have lived waiting to arrive at you, waiting to return to you. My blood hums here near you, and you are silent, because near you words begin to collapse, and all I do is speak and speak and speak. But near you, all measures of beauty, all measures of terror fail. Everything strong and everything implacable gathers, living, dying, living in turn, and your silence fills me. One last poem, because I haven't had a chance to read this one anywhere. And I still remember that I was, again, thinking about healing and strength. And I was having a very beautiful morning. I had been awake most of the night, and it was about 7, and the sun was coming up. And I was listening to Natella Lafourcade and Los Angeles Azules playing on loop. And so it was just a beautiful moment. And this song, or rather this poem, that I had wanted to write just came out. Let the dawn break, slowly, softly, brightly, over your skin. Let the darkness subside tenderly, even the piercing memories of stars growing hazy now. Night will come again. Night always comes again. Wake gently, wake carefully. This day is not for weeping. Your heart says, this day is not for raging. There are days meant for surrender and rest and growing strong. Touch the earth with bare feet, feet that have run, worked, hurt. Today, let them touch the earth gently, rhythmically. Hold your own shoulders, so accustomed to burdens, to bracing against blows. Hold them like blossoms, precious and many-petaled. Release your waist, your hips, the spaces between, repositories of so much pain, yours and what was inherited, and the pain of those you love. Let your body sway, hips weeping, hips laughing, hips affirming that life is still sweet, life is still, life is. Repeat this, caressing your own lips, so that you remember you are your own son. Thank you.